Well, good evening and welcome back to Wednesday Night Live for September 2nd, 2015. We start off our program with sadness this week. This week we've lost two dear friends. You may have seen the obituary for Chikako Miyasato Sanders in the paper last week. Chikako was a member of my church, a lovely lady, very much loved by many in this community. Her husband, as you may know, is Mike Sanders, Big Mike as I often call him, high profile in this community, and she was just loved by everyone. There was a huge turnout for her memorial this last Friday at Grace Lutheran Church. Chikako was 70 years old. I can't remember a time when I didn't see her with a smile and something pleasant to say, and just a sweet, dear lady, and she will be very much missed. And so, Chikako, as would be said in Japanese, oyasumi nasai. And if you speak Japanese, you know I have a bad accent. But basically that means good night, we'll see you again. Chikako Miyasato Sanders. Also, this even more recent, just this past Friday, we lost a dear friend, a patriot, Lillig Oram. Lillig was only 65 years old. Well known in this community. She and her husband have worked tirelessly as representative constitutional Republicans, very conservative, very active in the community, very, very highly thought of people. Lillig succumbed to lymphatic cancer, and she has pretty much kept it under wraps. An awful lot of people that know her did not know that she was ill. She's pretty much kept a low profile until it got to the point where she was just too tired to continue. And unfortunately, this past Friday morning, she passed on, and she too will be sorely missed. She was very active in the community. Many people knew and loved her. And to Bill and all of her family, our heartfelt condolences here also. Each week at this time, I tell you about Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered nonprofit ministry offering life-affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. I ask you every week, as I will ask you again, please contact Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center at 478-HOPE, 478-HOPE. See what you can do to help bring life into the world, help a young mother who may not be ready to be a mother, but doesn't want to lose her baby. The Compassion and Hope people will not tell you where to sell baby parts. They will not refer you to an abortionist. They are a Christian organization. They are about life. Call them at 208-478-HOPE. See what you can do to help them. As I've told you many times, they operate on a very short shoestring, and they can use all the help they can get. They don't get $500 million a year from the federal government, in other words, from my pocket and yours. They don't get any other help. They need your help. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center right here in Pocatello, located by the university, 478-HOPE. God will bless you, and you will bless a mother and a child. Well, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Democrat national chairman, says it's okay to kill babies. She has no problem with it. And I say that because if she is the Democrat national chairwoman, then ostensibly and presumably she speaks for the Democrat Party, which has become, as I may share with you, the party of death. Now, you remember it was the Democrats who kept the black people enslaved for many, many years. They were the progenitors of the Ku Klux Klan. They were the ones who championed Margaret Sanger, that pillar of the society who brought about what is today Planned Parenthood, the legalized murderers of babies. And the Democrats have brought you nothing but death and dismemberment, if you will, for years. So, and now we understand why, because it's people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz who say it's okay to kill babies. Not my problem. Well, we're going to revisit that issue tonight. But we got some things. You know, I think we need to cover some things that are happening in the press today. Just before I came in tonight, there was another one of these Black Lives Matters rants by these fools who have attacked some of their own Democrats, however you want to say it, who have had the audacity to say that all lives matter, not to the Black Lives Matter people. The Black Lives Matter people feel that only Black lives matter. And as we just witnessed over this weekend, a black man, and it's interesting we haven't seen Sheikh Obama contacting the police officer's family, this sheriff's deputy or police officer that was cold-bloodedly executed in public at a gas station by a black man. What? Black men are killing white men? Really? Walked up behind the officer who was filling his gas tank, and with no warning, no way the officer could defend himself, shot him in the back of the head. And then that wasn't enough, just because the officer was dead. He then stood over him and pumped 15 more rounds into him. This was caught on camera, apparently, and they did get the guy, who unfortunately surrendered. We're seeing this more and more and more, the lawlessness of a generation, if you will. Now, we went through that when I was a young officer in Los Angeles. We went through this very scenario back in the 60s and 70s with the Black Panthers, the Weather Underground, the SDS, and some of these other communist groups that were going about killing the pig, as they were calling us at the time, and that term has been revived, and now they're doing the same thing. And did you see the peace-loving Black Lives Matter, nobody else's do, Black Lives Matter people that were chanting in front of the Milwaukee State Fair, I think it was, something like that. Pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon. Pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon. Just a lovely, lovely group of people. Well, do Black Lives matter more than anybody else? Do they matter just at all? Well, you would think that they must not matter much to other black people, because blacks are killing blacks at a far more level of violence than whites, especially more than white police officers are killing blacks. Last year, I think there were something like 57 times the death of white officers being killed by blacks as blacks killing whites. It's an interesting phenomenon that in our nation right now, the statistics vary, but they're very, very close to the number of 74%. 74% of black babies are being born to mothers out of wedlock. Most of those will probably never know their fathers. And an interesting statistic I came across, my wife actually found this for me the other day. This is abortion statistics. You know, I shared with you several weeks ago a concern I had, because when Roe v. Wade was being pushed down our throats, and we were being told about all the horror stories of back alley abortions and women committing abortions using hangers and women dying and all sorts of horror stories. And it's very difficult to find statistics for the period of time leading up prior to Roe v. Wade on how many babies were dying or how many women were dying. As I've said before, you can be assured when there's abortion, most of those babies die. In fact, if they're aborted in a Planned Parenthood clinic, they all die. So it's, you know, there are two casualties in every abortion, one mother and one dead baby. Rarely does the mother die these days, except by infections or staph or something like that they pick up in some of these Planned Parenthood clinics. And as you know, we've been told that Planned Parenthood needs to stay around because they provide all kinds of medical services for women, that low-income and poor women would not have the opportunity to receive this care that Planned Parenthood allegedly gives. But it turns out that Planned Parenthood's major fund generator, other than the tax dollars, is selling baby parts, dead baby parts. Thank God they're dead. Well, now this is old. It's a little bit outdated. I couldn't find anything more current. I'm sure you can, somebody else can, but let me just share this with you. This is abortion statistics for the United States, and this is actually from the Right to Life of Michigan in 2013. According to the latest estimates from the Alan Guttmacher Institute, there were 1.06 million abortions performed during 2011 in the United States. Now remember, when the so-called back alley abortions were occurring, there were hundreds, perhaps. We don't know, because records weren't being kept at the time. They were being in back alleys. So the statistics we get from the usual pundits, the people on the left giving us all these statistics, as usual, they're meaningless, because they have no proof of any more than anybody else as to how many mothers were dying. But I assure you, it was not 1 million a year. That figure is down 34.2% from their high in 1990, when an estimated 1.61 million abortions were performed. To date, there are almost 60 million babies have been murdered by Planned Parenthood abortion clinics since Roe v. Wade. 60 million in the United States. We don't know what the rest of the world is doing. In the United States, 60 million babies. I bet there haven't been 1,000 mothers, but I digress. The Centers for Disease Control, CDC, also monitors abortions in the United States. Since 1997, they've received incomplete results or no abortion statistics from various states, including Maryland, California, and New Hampshire. The latest figures from the CDC were 730,332 abortions in 2011. And these figures are very rough. There have been other reports well over 1 million. According to the CDC, at least 46.3% of the women who had abortions in 2011 had obtained an abortion previously in their life. So these are serial abortions that are these mothers are conducting. You might say they're serial murderers. They've had more than one abortion. This wasn't their first time in the rodeo. At least 20.8% of women who aborted had 2 or more previous abortions. So is this, are these abortions really what we were told that they were of necessity and as a last resort? Well, apparently some mothers have been using, at least 21% of them, mothers have used this as a birth control system rather than condoms or pills. In 2011, 37.3% of abortions were performed on African American women, who comprise only 12.6% of the U.S. population, according to the 2010 census. Now think about that a minute. The black people, black women, and I don't use African American, as I've told you before. I know it's very chic to do that right now, but I know white people who were born in Africa. They are African Americans. They have become Americans, and they're not black. So we will stick with the old-fashioned system of calling it as it really is. These are black Americans, 37.3%. Now this was in 2011. 37.3% of the abortions, almost 1/3, more than 1/3, were on black babies. Margaret Sanger, that scion, or whatever the proper term for her, you know, the heroine of the left, the woman who brought us abortion on demand, was a racist. She was the one who put forth the plan to eliminate the black race and other undesirables through abortion and other forms of birth control. But abortion was primary. As a matter of fact, she was so successful in selling her program that Adolf Hitler and his cronies bought into it, and that's what they used to eliminate the Jews and other undesirables. So going back to fewer than 13% or less than 13% of the American population is black, over 37% of the deaths are to black babies. Black Lives Matter? Really? Apparently not to this 37%. A total of 27,629 induced abortions were reported in Michigan in 2014, which was a 5.8% increase from the total of 26,000 reported 2013, but a 43% decrease since 1987. These figures are all over the map, so I'm going to try not to make it too boring. Michigan residents received 97% or 95% of the induced abortions that occurred in Michigan in 2014. In 2014, about 49% of the resident women receiving abortions had no previous induced abortions, and it goes on. Okay, abortion myths. I'm going to get out of the math here. You get the picture. More than 1/3 of the babies being aborted are black children. Black Lives Matter? Really? Abortion advocates often use a coat hanger to symbolize the age of back alley abortions, where women were forced to seek abortions from unqualified butchers. The number of women who died from illegal back alley abortions was often said to be in the thousands. No statistics, remember. However, according to the U.S. Bureau of Vital Statistics, there were only 39 women who died from illegal abortions in 1972. That was prior to Roe v. Wade. And so they're giving us these outlandish statistics that thousands of women are dying from back alley abortions. We must have abortion make it legal so that women can go to certified and qualified people to have the abortions. Let's kill their babies legally and cleanly and save the mother. One injured, one dead. So they were saying there were thousands, and it turns out in 1972 there were 39. The whole nation, 39. To describe illegal abortion providers as unqualified is hardly accurate. Former medical director of Planned Parenthood, Dr. Mary Calderon, described in a 1960 American Journal of Health article that a study in 1958 showed that 84% to 87% of all illegal abortions were performed by licensed physicians in good standing. Remember, they're telling you that these were untrained butchers that were doing abortions with coat hangers? Well, turns out that about 87% were being done, illegal abortions, because it wasn't legal prior to Roe v. Wade, were being done by trained physicians. Dr. Calderon concluded that 90% of all illegal abortions are presently done by physicians. And so they sold us this canard that they had to have legal abortions so that they could stop having the back alley deaths of mothers by butchers. And it turns out 90% of these abortions were done by physicians, medical doctors. So it seems that the back alley butchers of January 21st, 1973 became caring doctors who believe in a woman's right to choose on January 22nd, 1973. In 1978, the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology stated that the legalization of abortion has had no major impact on the number of women dying from abortion, since the results of a study they completed showed that over 90% of all illegal abortions were performed by licensed physicians. Abortion advocates will also claim that 1 million American women each year were undergoing illegal abortions before Roe v. Wade. Statistics from the Centers for Disease Control show that these statements are highly misleading. The CDC reports that after abortion was legalized in January of 1973, there were 615,831 legal abortions. In 1976, there were 988,000 legal abortions. There weren't over 1 million abortions a year in the United States until the end of 1977, 5 years after abortion was made legal in all states. Abortion was legal in a handful of states, New York, Alaska, Hawaii, Washington, New Jersey, Vermont, and California, before Roe v. Wade. And the CDC reports that there were more than 500,000 legal abortions in 1972. Advocates of abortion claimed that if abortion became legal, child abuse would become less frequent. The National Incidence Study from the National Clearinghouse estimates that 1.5 million children in the United States were abused or neglected under the harm standard in 1993. This same study estimated that in 1980 there were 625,000 abused or neglected children. This is an increase of more than 148%. Numerous published scientific studies have found that women who abort a child, especially their first child, have a greater risk of getting breast cancer. One study found that at least 19% of women who abort suffer from diagnosable post-traumatic stress disorder. This was a report done in 1990. In a 1996 study published in the British Medical Journal, researchers found that women who had an abortion were 3 times more likely than the general population and 6 times more likely than women who gave birth to commit suicide in the following year. So we were sold a bill of goods by the Democrats that we had to have these legal abortions, or as I call them, murders, and they came up with all of these highfalutin statistics that meant nothing. They were baloney, canards. And now we've had almost 60 million abortions since Roe v. Wade came into existence. Well, we're going to cover a couple of things tonight. We're going to start with a clip that you may have seen some of this on television. Now, I must warn you right now, this is not for the children. This is not for the faint-hearted. If you have a problem facing the reality of what's going on in the abortion clinics, then you may not want to watch this. But if you need to see something to validate what you're being told, then you should watch this. It is very graphic. It is very adult. You should not have children or young impressionable people in the room. And if you have a weak stomach, then you probably won't want to be in the room either. The fact is, the babies are being murdered. They're being torn asunder. They're being ripped to pieces, and their parts are being sold. In the study, in this particular undercover segment that you're going to see, you'll see just how cavalier and how callous people can be selling God's creation, torn to pieces like a Frankenstein movie. I am an advocate that they should not blank these things out on television. We are so, television has been made so sanitary that people aren't really seeing what's really happening. It's an intellectual study that they don't actually get to complete. So when they talk about murdered babies, for many people it's simply a statistic. It isn't a reality thing, but it is real. And babies are dying every day. Many, 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 many babies are dying every day, and then their tiny little carcasses are being torn asunder and sold for research. They haven't done enough research yet. They need more baby parts. So I'm going to, Ryan is going to stop this film at a certain point because it's going to become very graphic. And I will warn you again, at about 9 minutes into this, 9.5 minutes into this, we will continue. I am one who advocates that they should in fact show the full clips on television when one of these mad mullahs in the Middle East beheads somebody. We need to see that. People need to see how graphic that is, how horrible it is, so they can see how wonderful Islam is. Well, it's the same with murdering babies. I see no difference between the baby murderers working for Planned Parenthood, beheading these babies and sending these babies' heads to people for research. And you will see where they joke about this in one plate. I see no difference between the Planned Parenthood butchers and the ISIS butchers. They're both killing a human being. And in spite of what Black Lives Matters believes, all lives matter. All right, enough of my soapbox, however you want to say it. Ryan, shall we do that first one? Please pay attention to this. You might want to have a pencil handy.
Parenthood makes zero profit on any fetal tissue donations.
You are reimbursed for what costs?
Simply costs of preservation, transfer, you know.
If we alter our process and we are able to obtain intact fetal cadavers, it's all just a matter of line items.
That would be $100 per specimen. 50 specimens per day would be $5,000 per day that Planned Parenthood was collecting from fetal tissue. Extrapolate that, $120,000 per month. That is certainly not recouping cost.
In terms of areas that I can contribute to the organization, both locally and nationally, is diversification of revenue streams. Well, so under the scope of where we probably have an edge over other organizations, our organization has been doing research for many, many, many years. And we've had studies in which the company, or in the case of the investigator, has a specific need for a certain portion of the products of conception, and we bake that into our contract and our protocol that we follow this. So we deviate from our standard in order to do that. Telling you this so then we can get creative about when and where and under what conditions can we interject something that is specific to the tissue procurement needs.
Sorry, that goes to my perfect for my next. Can you get creative? Can you alter if we say we need a liver?
Or not just liver, thymus, but let's say neural tissue is very difficult because.
Could you adjust the procedure if you knew they need high volume of this? Could you match that and?
18 to 22 week neural specimens, in
so
both hemispheres intact.
Yes. You could do that.
Yeah, I think we can. I mean, some of it is really outside. Some of it will be happenstance because sometimes as the procedure is happening, the procedure itself for the removal is generally standardized, and I'm saying generally loosely, generally standardized. And so just depending on the patient's anatomy, how many weeks, other where it's placed in the uterus, we're going to potentially be able to have some that will be more or less intact, and then some that will not be.
Right.
So, but it's something that we can look at exploring how we can make that happen, so we have a higher chance. It'll probably also require a little bit of input from the doctors, because the doctors are the ones asking, directly doing that, and when it matters, in the cases of when it's mattered, and the physicians also need an intact specimen, they can make it happen.
Right.
So we just need to figure out how that we can do this, under our project needs.
Right.
How many providers practice in the second trimester?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I don't. Everybody that is here does.
And really, specifically the later than 16-week cases, I guess.
I want to say that we have 6.
6 providers that go beyond 16 weeks. Oh wow.
Yeah. And that's something we'll have to discuss, with the docs and see how they can do it. Because some of our doctors in the past have projects, and they're collecting the specimens, so they do it in a way that they get the best specimen. So I know it can happen.
The doctors were also doing research. Oh wow.
Yeah. So
Okay, very good. I'm more on the business end of it.
Yeah.
I know that just going with the history of what's happened and wanting to not have that happen again. So for specific specimens, the compensation would be higher because we know you're going to run into problems.
There's going to be more.
How do we frame that so that we're not saying we're giving a higher...
Yeah, we can work it out in the context of, obviously, the procedure itself is more complicated. So that anything that we integrate into that procedure without having you cover the procedural cost is going to be higher, right? So anything about higher gestational age, there's more opportunity for complication, there's more administrative time involved. Sometimes the procedures are longer. So then anything that we piggyback onto that for collection purposes, obviously, would have to reflect that additional time cost, administrative burden.
So that our compensation that's higher to you for our specific specimen intact could be built
and
into
that's something that getting more information about it, as intact as you need, how we're going to do that. Then from there, when I'm working with our clinical trials and all of our additional specimen collection needs, I'm pretty bullish about getting as much information as I can prior to budgeting.
Well, that your financial background, really, I think that's what you can see the benefit of this financially, just having that background and seeing that there is it's gold out there. And it can be so beneficial. So I'm glad that you have that background so that you see the financial benefits of getting the right specimen and getting it intact. And if you have to change the procedure just a little bit within the framework that keeps it, we're all talking about it the same way in the right way. But that financial gain and the to your staff just knowing this is the end.
I think everyone realizes, especially because my department contributes so much to the bottom line of our organization here, even though we're one of the largest affiliates. Our research department is the largest in the United States, larger than any of the other affiliates combined.
Wow.
If that provider is needing to change the technique a little bit, and I know I'm going against my side of this, but I'm okay with, no, I want you to be paid per specimen, and rather than, oh, here, just ship this off. No, this is what we're looking for, and if you can do that and it compensates you and financially that's helping you to grow your clinic, I'm willing to do that.
And so if we alter our process and we are able to obtain intact fetal cadavers, then we can make it part of the budget that any dissections are this, and splitting the specimens into different shipments is this. I mean, it's all just a matter of line items.
And so what are they? Are they requesting just liver or liver thymus? Liver thymus long bone?
Everything. CNS, brain, kidney, thymus, liver, spleen, femur, bone marrow, hematopoietic stem cells from 14 to 22 weeks of gestation.
They're going to engraft all of those or just the hematopoietic? Purpose and objectives.
And they want it up to 22 weeks.
Yeah, including CNS, brain. Wow, they want everything. See, so that's the thing. So for a study like that, if we could provide, just a whole cadaver, and then they can take exactly what they want with the full quality, and everything, that is actually going to be ideal for them.
Well, it would make me very happy for us to finish up what we need to do, and I can put you in contact with them.
And their range is 14 to 22 weeks, is what they're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and I was wrong. They want 120.
120.
Uh-huh.
This is huge.
Oh, you caught me taking some notes. Well, we're coming to a part now that is extremely graphic. And I warn you again, it may not be for everybody, but I think it's important that we see just what we're talking about. We're not talking about just another line issue, as this doctor states. We're not talking just about another entry into a ledger someplace. We're talking about human babies, not a fetal cadaver, whatever you call it, human babies. Now, it occurred to me while I was watching this that more babies, listen to this for a minute, think about this, more babies are murdered by Planned Parenthood every month than all the soldiers killed in Iraq and Afghanistan through the entire war. Think about that for a minute. More babies are killed every month than all the soldiers killed in this entire war. And you heard the term that they're talking about 14 to 22 weeks. A 22-week-old child is what, 6 months, right? Almost 6 months old. This is a fully formed baby. This is not just a lump of tissue or fetal cadaver, or, these things. Now think about the money that they're talking about. For instance, $5,000 per day. Planned Parenthood is selling baby parts for $5,000 per day. They're pulling in over $100,000 a month for baby parts, human parts. That's over $1 million, $1.25 million a year, roughly. In addition to the $500 million we're giving them every year from our tax dollars, this is a business, folks. These people couldn't care less about life, unless it's theirs or unless it's black life that matters. And yet, 1 out of every 5 babies that's murdered is a black baby. Maybe almost 1 out of 4, more than that. Almost a third of them are black babies. All right. So now, once again, I warn you, this next portion, the remainder of this film is very graphic. All right, Ryan, shall we go ahead and complete this one? Please watch this.
Are there any fresh specimens from today that we can still look at, or?
We had a really long day and they're all mixed up together in a bag. Yet if I would have known 10 minutes ago, I would have saved something.
If we could get that doesn't mean it's not like we need something today, but if we could get a visual today of it, that would be a good thing. Is that possible?
Yeah, let me see. That one's probably frozen.
What we're looking for is like a visual baseline of like intactness and everything, and just so that we know like
intact they are. Right. Yeah,
Yes.
so like on a typical day, like kind of what that looks like, and then
And
what
it
sort
varies
of.
like based on gestation. Sometimes they come out really attacked. Do you
you want to do?
You're not gonna see nothing intact today, because the way we collect the tissue, it
Yeah.
all gets collected into one container.
We either, you don't want the, is it cremation?
What was the latest case that you did today?
The latest case we did today was a 5 week and 3 days.
No.
Oh,
the
20.
OR.
It was a 20. Oh, I know what you mean.
Right.
20 stationing. And that was one of the very first ones. So I'm assuming that one could almost be frozen.
So we're oftentimes looking for liver and thymus are two of the most in demand.
Yes.
Excellent.
All right. Here you go.
So now this. Sean, can you help me out? I think this is lung, right? I don't
Yes,
think this is
that's correct.
kidney. Yeah, these are lungs because
That's
that's the trachea in the middle
Yes. These are. So the intestines right here. Right here. See?
there. Yeah.
This comes out, like I said, the organs come out really, really well because you can
Right.
see all the intestines
Right.
pretty much almost like
And then this is a
intact.
big little placenta right here.
Yes.
Do you ever see thymus?
In this case is really little. Whenever we do like the 20, 22 weekers, we do.
Uh-huh.
You get a lot better.
But it's difficult to find thymus at this gestation.
Yeah.
What is the age of this?
This
This patient was like 18 weeks, I think.
is this this is limb. Okay,
Yeah.
and this is like scapula.
Yeah.
That-
The other thing that plays a tremendous part in this all is the dilation
Exactly.
that you've obtained.
Exactly.
And also how, for lack of a better word, how cooperative the patient is during the procedure.
Oh, really? Are they under conscious sedation? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
There's conscious sedation, but there's also times where it's just not. You've pretty much maxed out, and that's their tolerance.
Oh.
Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult.
Mhm.
They're completely relaxed. Sometimes it's a lot easier to not do so many passes of the forceps. So it just really varies. And like I said, a lot of it does depend on the dilation that was obtained. And like all of our procedures over 20 weeks actually go through a 2-stage dilation process. So usually like the cervix is, like for this procedure, cervix easily like at 3 centimeters. What we do in the OR is that we lay them out to account for everything before it kind of gets put back in the basin and just like sealed up and packaged up. Because we actually do a lot of collections for sexual assault cases. Kind of, but with that it's different. It's like some placenta and a long bone. But it's still very, it's very cleaned up. So it's different than this as well. So.
These orbits are good too, and at this stage you start to get the retinal pigment epithelium,
Yes.
which is in the back, which is you've collected that before.
So all the orbits are so easy, like 95% of the
They're easy to find too, even in the early gestation, because you're just looking
they
for
come
the.
out like firmer a month type deal, because it whittles down some.
Is that a Bible number for you?
How many per month? Or the gestational age, 14 to 16, or
No, 40. From like 16 to 22.
There's how many per- yeah.
40 to 50 easy.
per month?
Yeah. Gail Penny Fellowship in Columbia, the active researcher. So she's very well versed in what she needs to do.
To just change up just a little bit. Okay.
They've already talked with PPFA, Deb Nepatola, and the whole group up there, and because fetal tissue donation varies so much state by state, PPFA is moving away from a standardized policy.
Yeah, so because I attended the patient service
Yeah.
day, and Kristen Flood did talk about fetal collection and stuff like that, so yeah.
Huh, very interesting. Remember when I first got here, and it was, you have to have this form, it has to be like this.
We had to have this particular consent form, very specific, but yeah, no, that's what Kristen was saying. Because
Interesting.
they're encouraging more participation, but they don't want to get too into the mix of it.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, cool. And any idea why the other affiliates in Texas think it's illegal?
Really?
Want to see some more?
These are not fun to watch. They're not meant to be fun to watch. This is not meant to be entertainment. Although those people in the film are laughing and joking and carrying on, this is horrible. The words escape me. However, there are words that we can share. Did you see, speaking of words have consequence and meaning. Did you see where Hillary Clinton, that pillar of society and community, has equated Republicans with terrorists? Isn't that interesting? Republicans aren't the ones doing what you just saw there, but Hillary Clinton, because her numbers are flagging and she's in trouble as her coronation slips slowly away from her, or maybe quickly away from her, she called Republicans terrorists. Well, it isn't Republicans who are beheading babies and sending their heads through the mail to laboratories to be further dissected. And it isn't Republicans beheading Christians in the Middle East. It's ISIS in the Middle East, and it's Democrats and Planned Parenthood in the United States of America. Who are the real terrorists? Now, here's an interesting from blackgenocide.org. It says the most dangerous place for an African American is in the womb. And this is a quote from Irma Clardy Craven. Several years ago, when 17,000 aborted babies were found in a dumpster outside a pathology laboratory in Los Angeles, California, some 12 to 15,000 were observed to be black. Remember, our statistics show that almost 40% of the aborted babies are black. Black Lives Matter. Minority women constitute only about 13% of the female population aged 15 through 44 in the United States, but they underwent approximately 36% of the abortions. According to the Alan Guttmacher Institute, black women are more than 5 times as likely as white women to have an abortion. On average, 1,876 babies were aborted every day in the United States. Every day. This incidence of abortion has resulted in a tremendous loss of life. It has been estimated that since 1973, black women have had about 16 million abortions. Michael Novak had calculated since the number of current living blacks in the United States is 36 million, the missing 16 million represents an enormous loss. For without abortion, America's black community would now number 52 million persons. It would be 36% larger than it is. Abortion has swept through the black community like a sigh, cutting down every 4th member. And remember who is the champion of the black community? Why, the Democrats. And who is the champion of abortion? Why, Hillary Clinton. And who is the champion of aborting black babies? Margaret Sanger, the progenitor of what is now called Planned Parenthood. There was an interview. Well, I think I'll save that because we've got a couple of other things to do. Here's a letter from the Thursday, August 27th, your letters to the ISJ. The August 25 Idaho State Journal article on women's plight stated, Idaho is the 2nd worst state for women, Utah, of course, being the worst. I guess it depends on what questions a person asks and what we expect women to do. What if getting married and raising a family is a good thing? Are these bad states for women who want to be wives and mothers? I did some looking up. In the number of children per family, Utah is first in the United States and Idaho is 3rd. For the age of marriage, Utah is youngest, Idaho 2nd youngest. What about sheer survival? Does being destroyed in the womb count as plight? How likely are Idaho women to be aborted? For a woman's likelihood of being aborted, Idaho is way down at 47%, or number 47 on the list. Utah is 48. I'm glad there are a lot of women out there who don't think they are suffering because they're not just like men, women who show that raising a family is a high and honorable calling. Maybe the article's opening sentence should read a little more candidly. Idaho is the 2nd worst state for women who want to compete with men. And that was written by Monty Ledford of Aberdeen. Monty puts in some pretty good letters. Matter of fact, we're going to read another in a moment. There was an op-ed that the State Journal wrote recently, and it's kind of convoluted, as so much of their stuff is. I think I can figure out who wrote this. Doesn't matter, I suppose. It's representative of journal thinking, I suppose. But you have to listen to it because it's a little twisted, a little convoluted, and you wind up scratching your head and you're saying, well, what are they really saying here? This is from Thursday, August 27th in the Our View section of the paper. And it's titled, Let's Support Women Who Decide to Give Birth. Very good start. Planned Parenthood has been in the news a lot lately because of hidden camera videos showing officials from that organization talking nonchalantly and laughing about the sales of fetus baby parts, also known as baby body parts. The footage of the discussions with Planned Parenthood leaders chatting about harvesting organs and even the heads of fetuses for use in research comes across to many Americans as barbaric. It's like we've hit another low as a society. There are calls from Republican lawmakers in Congress to cut Planned Parenthood's funding, but many people are defending the abortion-providing organization despite the recent undercover videos. It's sad but true that as long as our nation allows abortion, organs from the aborted fetuses are going to be harvested from the aborted babies. Another reality is that there are going to be abortion clinics which legally or illegally provide late-term abortions. Yes, babies will be born with beating hearts only to be killed by abortion clinic workers. There is a video out there, I don't have it, but there is a video that I told you about last week, where a baby is born intact, complete whole baby, not breathing. The clinician says to the camera people, "Hey, watch this." Taps the baby's heart. The baby's heart starts beating. The baby starts breathing. They inject it with the solution to kill it, and they behead it and dissect it. This was a complete intact human, and we're told that this is for the mother's health. All these things have happened and are going to happen. Now, if abortion were illegal, there are a host of other bad things that would happen as well. Here we go with the baloney. Abortions will go underground. Oh, that's so sad because there were so many of them. Not 60 million, but there were so many, hundreds perhaps over years. Despite the illegalities of ending a pregnancy, you better believe people would still find doctors willing to perform the procedure. And as we learned in a few moments ago, that 90% of those illegal abortions before Roe v. Wade were done by doctors. The places where abortions would be performed under these circumstances would sometimes be pretty crude and unsanitary, like many Planned Parenthood clinics are already. If you had seen 20 years ago the Planned Parenthood in Pasadena, where some of the film came from, you would see what a disgusting abattoir that place was. And no doubt women would suffer and might even die under these circumstances. Might even die. The baby always dies, like already happens in Planned Parenthood. Then there would be the pregnant women who would attempt to end their pregnancies on their own by using a metal hanger or some other brutal method that would hurt both the fetus and mom, perhaps killing both. And there's that old canard. We got to make it legal so that they won't be using coat hangers and the women won't be in jeopardy. Of course, the baby's always in jeopardy. The baby always dies. Yeah, and don't be too concerned for that unwanted baby. It's just fetal tissue. Polls show that most Americans are in favor of abortion, at least in certain circumstances, and most Americans support the use of fetuses, babies, in medical research. If our society was against abortion, it wouldn't be legal. The tide of public opinion would prompt our nation's leaders to outlaw the practice. Well, like so many other things that we've seen the left do, it was made legal through device, through cunning, through deceit, through guile, through lies that were pushed upon the public to blow extraordinarily out of proportion the reality of what was happening. So that, yes, there was a clamor in the left, among the enlightened, that we had to make these legal. And as the Clintons once said, I'm sure it was tongue-in-cheek with them, legal but infrequent or something like that. Yeah. But it remains legal despite the organ harvesting and later-term abortions. Those Americans who say abortions are barbaric can make a solid argument. But that train has left the station, so to speak, without debating this procedure. It's legal, and the tough talk of pro-Americans and politicians is just that, wasted breath. I'm sorry. I'll continue wasting my breath on behalf of the unborn baby until they put me in a box. Plus, it's a choice. Ah, yes, choice. A woman's choice, certainly not the baby's. Women are not forced to abort their babies, that's true. And that makes it even more repugnant. They choose to. And you remember, murder is defined as premeditated, unlawful taking of a human life. Think about that for a minute. Is abortion premeditated? Yeah, I'd say so. Perhaps a more productive and rewarding route for the pro-life movement would be to shift from pointing out how immoral the procedure is to making an effort to help women who decide to have their babies. Yeah, we've been trying to do that for a long time. Wouldn't it be nice if the pro-life people got as much money and as much television and airtime as do the abortionists? It'd be real nice. There are millions of women out there who have decided to follow through with their pregnancies, despite the fact that it would be much cheaper in the long run and perhaps even advantageous to their career choices if they had an option or an abortion. Despite the courage shown by these women who accept the inconvenience of an unwanted pregnancy and the impact it will have on the rest of their lives, our society is either ambivalent or negative about them. Women who decide to give birth under less than ideal conditions, whether it be the financial strain of another mouth to feed or the lack of a father to help out, should not looked at as being irresponsible or like they're simply trying to collect welfare. Yeah, let's show how benighted the welfare moms are that have, like the one woman in Detroit who has something like 15 children, each of them bringing in about $2,000 a month. The pro-life movement would likely find its future more fulfilling if it focused on helping and boosting the spirits of these women who could simply get abortions rather than choosing the more difficult option, being a mom. And that's just bubblegum blarney. This double speak by the paper trying to be fair and balanced and hit both sides of the issue. It's crap. The result of such efforts by pro-lifers would certainly be fewer abortions. We can say, and perhaps be correct, that centuries from now, today's Americans and their legalized abortion might be looked at as sinister. Years from now? How about now? Most cultures that have done anything to hurt their youngest members are viewed as uncivilized at best and pure evil at worst. And what we're seeing today is nothing, not at all different from what we saw in biblical times when babies were sacrificed to Baal and other false gods. Well, I digress. That's how we might be looked at for allowing abortion. Those thoughts aside, most Americans support a woman's right to choose. And there we are, reinforcing the baloney. Rather than fighting the losing battle to ban abortions. And it's losing because of people like this who write this crap. Let's give a hand up and not stigmatize those women who do what many of us see as the right thing. And there's the crux of this whole article. Whoever wrote it sees abortions as pragmatic and the right thing. These women need our help and support, not our scorn. Leave the choice of what to do with women, but support them with all our hearts when they decide to give birth. And that's the usual weak sister palaver when they're talking out of both sides of the face to sound like they're fair and balanced. You can't expect nothing better from the ISJ. Well, following that, August 30th, another letter to the editor. In Pilgrim's Progress, author John Bunyan was a character, Mr. Face Both Ways. This name is apt for the ISJ editorial position on selling baby parts. The editors virtually admit that our abortion industry is barbaric, then discount legislative means of opposing it. Why? Because it is legal. I wonder what would the editors have said about political inaction in the face of other equally legal atrocities of recent history. The Nazi destruction of the Jews, China's one-child policy, the U.S. expropriation of Native Americans, slavery. Then the editors have the gall to say anti-abortion people should promote motherhood and infant welfare. Where have you people been? Who invests more time, gives more money, and offers more efforts to young mothers and children than the thousands of pro-life pregnancy centers? These people are shelling out of their own pockets to save babies' lives, while Planned Parenthood, with hefty government funding, rakes in the dough selling baby parts. No one has taken an eraser to Proverbs 24:11 and 12. This was from Monty Ledford of Aberdeen again. And just lest we forget, Proverbs 24:11. Rescue those being led away to death. Hold back those staggering toward slaughter. Proverbs 24:12. If you say, but we knew nothing about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who guards your life know it? Will he not repay everyone according to what they have done? Well done, Monty. Well done. Well, we're just about out of time for this evening. Not quite. I want to remind you quickly. Oh, by the way, if there's any portion of this this program that you'd like to see again, you can see this program again at noon on Sunday, 12 o'clock, on the same cable station. And I also urge you to tune in on the same cable station at 5 o'clock on Sunday for Christian Apologetics with Aaron Hayes. You can also go to YouTube. Just go YouTube, Ralph Lillig. It'll pop up Ralph Lillig. Hit that button and you'll get my latest shows. You can even look at those things that have been archived for about the last 2 years. You'll find a lot of stuff in there that you might find interesting. Now, last week I started something that I plan to continue because we're going to be continuing more about the monsters in Islam, not just the monsters at Planned Parenthood. But I told you that those of you who are new to the program and may have more interest in things that are going on in Islam, other than what you get in the news, there are some books that I would suggest you read. Last week I suggested that you read by Unveiling Islam, and this is the book with this woman, this beautiful eyes on this Unveiling Islam. Read this. This is a very good primer, so to speak. Very easy to read. That was my first read on Islam when I became interested. Excellent, well done. And then Dr. Stephen Kirby, Letting Islam Be Islam. This is an excellent piece. It tears apart some of the baloney that the Islamic apologists do when they're quoting Islam and trying to tell you how benevolent it is. So that's Letting Islam Be Islam. Now, there's another book. One of the things that you are newer, that may be newer to this, are you have heard this, but you may wonder what it's all about. You heard about the Crusades, and we, the Christians, were those horrible crusaders beating up on the Muslims. Well, here's a book that you must read. This is a must-read for everybody. God's Battalions, the Crusade, the Case for the Crusades. God's Battalions, the Case for the Crusades, and this is by Rodney Stark. This is an excellent publication on what the real Crusades were and why. And it will show Islam in a much different light. It'll show the Crusades in a much truer light. Well, that's about it. So I ask that you please watch us again next week. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch our program tonight. May God richly bless you and yours until we meet again next week at this time. God bless you. Good night. Thank you for viewing.